Alrighty. Hi, nice to see you again.
Hey, nice to see you too.
Thanks for coming in. How have you been?
I've been doing pretty good. Just things are moving along, like with doing my therapy at my site that I'm working at right now for internship. And I'm hopeful about all that stuff.
Mhm.
So that's uh that's all going in the right direction. What I wanted to talk about in general was just that like now that things are moving along, I kind of feel like I'm also, I'm finally coming to terms with the fact that I have to leave certain things behind.
Mhm.
And I think that like I feel still kind of sad about that in some ways.
Yeah.
And maybe like it's kind of like where I feel like I'm doing the right thing. I know it's gonna be good. I just also feel like still sad that I'm gonna miss out on certain things that I could have done.
I think it feels very bittersweet.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely bittersweet. That's a good word for it. Because I do feel good about the way things are going. It's just that like there's this kind of like sadness or like grief there about the fact that certain opportunities are just cut off. So I think that like to me it matters because it's still like influences like the way I think. Like I can tell that my thoughts, this stuff that occupies what I think about is influenced by like those feelings of like sadness or like grief, like I've lost something. Um, yeah,
So you're feeling sad that you're sort of leaving some things behind, but it's bittersweet because you do know that you're moving in the right direction and that, you're doing well for yourself. It's just, sucks to have to come to terms with the fact that not everything lasts forever.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like you don't always get to keep that opportunity, kind of like what you just said. Like it doesn't last forever, and once that point comes, like I'm left thinking like, am I just jumping in because this feels like the only option that's left? Like, and to be more concrete, like even just going forward from here, I really am interested in studying the brain and things like that. And I can definitely use that in the route that I'm going. But like, there's this nagging thought in my mind. Like, if I was studying it another way, like if I was like a cognitive psychologist or something like that, something that was like always in the back of my mind and kind of where I started out in my education. Am I going to miss something important in that and then want to study it and not be able to, not really have the tools or the methodology? So that's kind of where my sadness and my like ambivalence and almost what to me feels like I would say grief. Um,
Grief, like you lost something.
yeah, yeah. And I think the loss something probably has to do with just like the way that I think of myself. I just have this grief towards that like that I would be in that position that of the stuff that I was talking about, like being able to study certain things. Um, I feel that grief that I won't be that person, that scientist that was able to do that, and to think that like it's gone, that opportunity. That I think that's what hurts.
Mhm. Is that something that you would still like to pursue? Or have you kind of just come to terms with the fact that it is better to go in a different direction?
I think that's the thing. Like I'm not 100% sure, but I'm feeling like I'm 98. It's just like the way that I'm about to get a job, already in counseling. All of that's perfectly going to work with my schedule. And for once in my life, my resume actually adds up. I mean, I probably need to do a little bit more research, which I'm excited to do and I'm already doing for counseling in order for my resume to be competitive for like counselor education and supervision PhD. So in that regard, like I'm ready to go with that. But to answer your question, I would like to do all that other stuff, but I feel like there is still more that my resume would need. It's like there's all these other things that I would have to do. And as much as I want to do that, I'm sick of feeling like I have to do all these things when I feel like I've accomplished certain stuff. I'm sick of feeling like I have to be good enough. And I think that I can do most, maybe not all, but most of what I want, I can do in the field that I'm in and that I actually I feel somewhat appreciated in. So it's kind of like, I'm just not sure if there's something genuine in my original aspirations that like, maybe there is something in the cognitive psych methodology that I feel that I really need. Or at this point, if it's just like, that's because that's how I always thought of it. And it's more a matter of like momentum that I've just been like thinking that rather than like, there's some genuine insight that I'll get from it. It's just like, that's what I think about, I guess.
Do you feel like you're doing well enough? You mentioned like sick of feeling like you need to be good enough.
I mean, in some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. I feel like yes, because I feel like I can do what's expected of me and what's going to be helpful ultimately, like the reasonable expectations for what I'm going to have to do. But as far as that other thing that I wanted to do, like clinical psych / like cognitive psych, there's so much overlap between the two. I don't necessarily feel good enough because obviously, since I didn't even get into that when I originally applied to that, I feel like I was lacking certain skills and things on paper that I should have accomplished. I think I could do those things, you know, had I had better organization and more foresight that I have today. But currently, I still feel like I'm lacking in a lot of things that would enable me to do that.
Do you feel like you're unable to still do that at some point?
I mean, the thing that's gonna to come to bear with that is probably time. So I think time is a significant factor for me because I'm like, well, you know, I'm getting to a point where I'm probably gonna have a family in the near future, like maybe not like next year or anything, but I mean within the next couple of years. So like even right now I'm in a relationship and I still live with my parents and I'm ready to get out of like that situation this summer. And I just feel like what I do right now, these next moves are going to pretty much set the trajectory of my life because I'm most likely not going to do a PhD in counselor ed and then try to go back to psychology or something like that. That's not anything that I would be interested in doing. And so it's like this next step to me has some finality to it. Like it's like, this is it. And if there's anything that I want from some other kind of field, I'm going to incorporate it in, but I'm not necessarily going to seek to get that degree or be certified in that other field.
Right, that's just what I was thinking. I was wondering if there's any kind of sort of compromise where you can get a little bit of the best of both worlds and incorporate some of what you feel like you're lacking into what you already have.
Yeah, and I mean, so speaking of that, like that's what I do love about counseling. Counseling is it's really incorporating the brain more. And although it's like we don't go through necessarily like all of the deep methodology of studying the brain, we definitely use some of the insights. Even some of the courses like at Penn West, they're starting to bring in this like trauma-informed care and things like that. And so I'm glad that within my field, not having to overstretch my boundaries, I'm going to be able to study the brain and talk about that and learn about that. And that I'm definitely excited about. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the, going back to the best of both worlds. That is something that I am trying to do. That does make me feel some amount of closure with the situation, because I've started to think like, maybe it's just that I'd always thought of it as psychology that was like the major problem for me. That like is the reason why I feel this grief. Like maybe if I from the beginning had thought of it like as counseling having a lot to do with the brain, this, that, and the third, then maybe I wouldn't feel as much grief about it.
Yeah, because you can utilize a lot of knowledge that you have about the brain and how it functions in your work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely gonna do that, and you're absolutely right about that. I guess, maybe it is too, like, going back to what we were talking about with being the good enough about it, it's like, I think maybe to me, not getting into that, like those other programs and stuff like that, it's also like, and not even back then, but currently, like if I currently apply, I don't know that I have all the skills that would be helpful, and I feel like that says something about how deep I can think about the problems, and that bothers me. So I do feel, I do guess some of my grief comes from feeling like not good enough too. And I don't really like admitting that either.
Yeah. I'm wondering what exactly it is that you feel like you have missed out on. Because there's lots of ways for you to achieve these things that you want to implement into your life without getting a whole nother degree. I'm curious if you were, more concerned about the degree or just the acquisition of knowledge that would have came with it. Because right now, the life that you've sort of built for yourself is a perfect place to utilize that kind of knowledge. It's completely relevant, for you to still learn those things, and you still can on your own time outside of a degree, and then implement it into the work that you're doing now. You just wouldn't have letters.
Yeah,
And that,
yeah. I mean, that is a great point, and that's, I would say, a big driving factor for what is helping me feel good in general, like throughout this time. And I genuinely believe that perspective of it. I don't know. I think that's the thing. It's like, it's almost like, I feel like I still think about it. I'm really not sure what to pinpoint within it, like, as to why I think about it so much. I mean, one thing that I thought of in the past, and like, is I kind of, I admire the like the purity of graduating college and, having done what you needed to do so that you could be in that position. And once again, I think it's just the fact of knowing that like I didn't do that. And now I'm angry at myself to a degree, because I know that I could have made that happen. Or at least I feel like I could have. Maybe I don't know, but I feel like I could have made it happen. And so a part of me, I think, just doesn't want to accept that, like it's like I haven't given up on that in order to not really feel that kind of anger about missing that opportunity. It's like at some degree in my mind, I'm holding on to it, even though everything else in my life is like, you're already here in this other place. Why do you keep thinking about that? So going back to your question about essentially like, is it just the degree itself? It's like, it's not even the letters, because I'd have the letters either way. It's like, there's something more about it, like genuinely about what the fields are going to emphasize, and the knowledge, I think, is the primary thing, because it's like, if I had the skill set, I feel like I would feel more confident that I could get into that field even currently, but I know that I don't. And to some degree, I don't want to seek it out for the reasons we mentioned. Like, I don't want to keep trying to build up things so that I can be. And even one day in the future, even if, you know, I get a PhD in something else and I build those skills up and I think that I would just accept it. Like, I don't need to do that. I can integrate other, you know, things into counseling. And I can build those skills up and appreciate that knowledge just technically in another field. It's like, it doesn't even really matter, you know. It's just, that is still something that, like, I think about, and I think it's gonna be on my mind for some time.
Sorry, I feel like I'm lacking a little bit of my background. Is counseling not exactly the field that you wanted to be in? Is there other work that you wanted to do? I couldn't tell if you're being intentionally vague, or is this like something you feel comfortable talking about?
No, I think that originally I wasn't 100% sure. I mean, I was kind of like more so, I was like, do I want to go to neuroscience or do I want to go into psychology? Those were like my two original intentions. And I actually went and talked to like a neuroscientist studying mental illness at Pitt and actually talked to him about it a little bit. Like, I tried to reach out to a teacher. I thought that was like a smart thing to do. And he kind of advised me to go in the psych route based on what I was telling him. And so I'd always seen myself as a neuropsychologist. That's what I literally envisioned. And, you know, what came with that is a really heavy emphasis on like the brain and the biological understanding, So that kind of fit even like the things I was reading about, the things I'm thinking about. And I'm concerned that when I say these are the two fields, at the top of the two fields, when you start wanting to conduct your personal research, what is going to be the ceiling? Like, I feel like that's where I start to get the most legitimate in my questioning, and not as much about my personality or my fears, etc. That I'm like, is what I genuinely want to do, is there going to be a ceiling to it in just the personal research that I want to do?
Okay.
And I'm just unsure, and I think I'm mad at myself because if I was in psych, I don't know that I would have the same exact ceiling. I mean, there's always another ceiling somewhere, but between these two that are both practically speaking achievable for me to some degree, I am concerned about the ceiling. And then I'm gonna once again if I do get to that point, and then once I get there, I'm gonna feel that sadness again. And like, I use different emotions for it because I feel like it's more so on the sad side, I would say, because I'm not really angry. And I think that's why I gravitate towards grief. Because I'm more so a little bit sad, you know, and just upset like with myself.
Yeah. I have a hunch that you probably hold yourself to a higher standard than anyone else.
I think so. I think a lot of my family members and stuff appreciate what I'm doing, you know. I do hold myself to a higher standard, but like, it's a part of me is like, doesn't even like saying that because I wasn't at a higher standard when I needed to be. You know, now I'm Mr. High Standard, but it's like, where was I a couple years ago when I should have been like thinking about that? You know, and so like, yeah, I am, and I'm proud of that. I feel like I could have been like that earlier, and so it's like, why wasn't I? You know, just bothersome. And I don't like to say it. I realize I don't really like to talk about it out loud, like, because I'm the kind of person where like, when I say something out loud, I feel like it makes it almost more true to other people. I think I care about what other people think, but like, my perspective on it is more nuanced. Like, I feel like once I wrap this up emotionally for me, I'll be good with it. I'm just not yet. Like, that's why I don't even like talking about, because I don't like to make myself look weak or embarrass myself, or like I'm trying to say like that I don't want to do what I'm going to do. You know, that's not how I really feel. I just feel conflicted about what I didn't do at the time.
Right. As you're saying all these things, it reminds me of a similar feeling that I think I might have felt during about reflecting on a time when I, was not meeting a standard that I would have liked to have met. And I had to take a break from like school and work and my professional and personal development and everything because I had stuff I was going through. And now I look back and used to think of it as time lost or like opportunities lost. And I think something that has helped me find like peace in that is just knowing that it was necessary. Because it's not that I was doing nothing during that time. I was doing something, even if that something was nothing, and even if I had to do nothing to recover from something beforehand, or to like recalibrate or to figure out what it was, what the next step was I needed to do. That period of time was necessary for me to get on track to where I am. Because I definitely could not have done what I'm doing now then. Like I wasn't ready for it. It was time.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really relevant, point. I think that is a motivation for me for sure. Like just thinking of that, like that there was something useful in the time spent and that something was definitely being done. And I think too, like talking about the psychology and this, that, and the third, my undergrad wasn't psych, and so I do still have a deep identity in that in some way that I feel like I don't have to lose, which I'm like, connecting to what you're saying. So like that time that I did spend doing that, like was me doing psychology, and in fact, I could probably still teach undergrad like psychology. So I'm really excited about that. And so I do think that there was some time spent like, well, for sure. So I think that is gonna like be something that carries me through too, is looking at it like that, like time spent, the time was spent well, and just life experiences too, like being in the counseling field, psychology field, like human experience is just so critical. Like even more so than just like books.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're going to learn so much more outside of school than you ever will in school. So, and like you said, personal experience, there's a lot that I think someone has to go through outside of school in order to be ready for the next stage of school.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that also helps me feel better because I do feel like I know I could do what I envisioned for myself in the past. Had I known everything that I know today, I feel like I could have easily achieved that. But upon saying it, I feel guilty as if I'm trying to convince people of something, like I'm trying to convince you of something. Whereas like I do just know it for me, which I think then comes back to like I care to some degree how other people view the situation. Like it's almost as if I'm saying like I want to be I want to be viewed coming from that kind of psychology, like brain type of viewpoint. And so, maybe that's a part of my issue is that I see the identification with that in that degree, not necessarily like sure if I'll get that in my counseling degree or not. If somebody will try to put a limitation on what I'm allowed to study, where I'm allowed to go with that. And then that restricts, that me using that in the way that I'll be viewed as somebody that doesn't know about that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're proud of who you are and you don't want to be misunderstood or not, perceived as like your truth, by other people.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really true. I know to some degree too, like I feel like I have a noble purpose in that because I do want to help other people with that. I kind of laugh at myself though at the same time because to some degree, that's like a little bit controlling. And I wouldn't say that I'm controlling of other people, but I feel like I try to control my mental processes. Like,
Yeah.
it's like I'm exerting over control over my own self to be thinking that I'm viewed a certain way. I don't know. Maybe it is controlling other people. I'm not sure. But yeah, there's just something with control there.
Do you think you're more concerned with controlling yourself? Or is it other people? Like how they perceive you?
I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. But I would say that like something about the way that I am thinking about this does feel really rigid, and I know that. Like I can sense that it's kind of rigid. It's like, why wouldn't I just be more flexible? It's like the question I ask myself. Like why have you even thought about this for so long? So yeah, I don't know, just something about it feels rigid and controlling. I'm just not sure, but I don't really think I have 100% answer.
Might feel rigid because you do need to be more flexible.
Yeah,
Maybe more flexible mentally with considering all the different ways that the situation could look and that it's allowed to look. Because it sounds like you've painted a very clear picture for yourself for how you want it to look. But that might be the thing that's causing you some grief is because you're not allowing yourself, flexibility of it, possibly looking a little different. Same picture, maybe just like a little different thing.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think that that's true. And I'm starting to loosen up on that for sure, in a good way. But yeah, overall, I think that's definitely like an issue that I've had. Um, uh, so yeah. Okay. Going forward, I'm gonna put like I'm gonna try to do all the things that we're talking about right now in general are ways that I genuinely plan on like looking at this, like how the time was spent well, how there's other views of what my original intention was, how there's different ways that looks. Um, and things can still be incorporated into it. And that's how I view it. And I'm excited about that going forward. And like as we're talking about it now, I mean, I feel good thinking about that, and I appreciate like your recognition of that. Because once again, I think that that's where like I feel constrained to some degree is like how other people might put me in a category, and I feel like I might not get the credit for the work that I want to put in, the work that I'm probably going to put in. I'm just not sure.
I always tell myself, when I don't like the way things are, that everything works out in the end. If it's not working out, then it's not the end. Because it does work out in the end. And I, also remind myself whenever I think about all these concerns, because I have my standard. We all have high standards for ourselves. It's a normal thing. Everyone tends to be a lot less flexible with themselves as they are than they are with other people. I remind myself that a lot of my own personal growth and what I'm going to learn professionally is going to come from just being in the field, not even from any degree or anything that I get. That just like lays the legal groundwork for me to be able to get out there and do what I want to do and learn what I want to learn. So maybe don't think of it as like an opportunity lost. You're creating this perfect situation for yourself to go forward and be able to do those things that you want to do and learn the things that you want to learn. I mean, I can think of plenty of things that I wish that I was learning from this program that I'm not, that I know I'm gonna have to go forward and study on my own.
Right.
To be able to use in the field, in the work that I want to do, which is what I put most of my value in, is the work that I do, not necessarily like where I came from. I have like a coworker that talks about how he like did his undergrad at Pitt, but got his master's at Cal, and he says that he's like not proud of that. And I'm like, dude, who cares? Like, as long as like, you know, like you make a name for yourself from the work that you do.
Absolutely.
After school.
Absolutely.
You know, no one's gonna, like, in time, like, yeah, right now this is like the big thing on your resume, but in time, no one's gonna care about that anymore. They're gonna look at what you've done.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that, because it was like, as I try to sort that out in my own mind, like that's not something that really matters to me. Like what school you go to. Like I'm not, I don't grieve over the fact that I'm not going to Harvard. I mean, that doesn't matter, you know, because just, and for the reasons that you mentioned, like the value comes from the work that like we do personally. So, you know, in my case too, I feel like it is just like a range of ability, like going through a certain type of program gives you a certain type of, you know, methodology to work with and a way of thinking. So that's such a good, that's like also a good point. And that actually makes me feel better, because, you know, I try to analyze myself to some degree, like, and say, like, is this just like, what is this? Is this about like, is this about pride? Is it about, you know, public opinion? Like, what is it? But when I think about it, it's like, you know, I never do grieve over not going to Harvard. I that's not something that I really care about. So I really, in that case, for me, it truly is just like the difference between like the degrees. But there may not be a difference. Like that perceived difference is, I think, as we're talking, like what you know, I'm working on. And then I believe that like that's the conclusion that I will come to. It's just that that difference is more so perceived. And it's a fear, like I'm afraid to fail, essentially. You know, I'm afraid to like not achieve what I set out to achieve because I made these mistakes early on and not getting into things that I thought I would get into. It's not that I don't, once again, it's not that I don't like what I'm doing now. I love what I'm doing now. And it's another door that I hadn't anticipated being there and giving me everything that I needed. It's just that other door that I always had seen that never opened. That still leaves like a bad taste in my mouth.
What exactly was that other door? Is it just opportunities for different kinds of work? Or is it just, you know, wanting to learn about things that you're not going to learn about in this program?
So, like, what something that I think that I'm lacking, that I'd like to work on in the future, is even just like my understanding of math. I think the reason I think of math is because, like, with math, you can like essentially quantify the potential outcomes for something. And when I think about like trauma and emotions and things like that, a part of me wonders, like, what if we could figure out, based on a limited amount of constraints of what people go through, or like the configuration of their brain, like what are the potential responses that they can have? And so like this is just some like vague thought, right? This isn't something I have scientifically like laid out. That's just an example. And so like what I'm trying to say is that math can help you set up a problem. That's what I'm actually trying to say. It can help you set up a problem. It can help you say, this is point A, this is point B, these are all the inputs, these are all the outputs. It helps you define the territory. And so I'm concerned about getting to a place where I want to do that and then not being able to think through that problem. So once again, like that good enough, that insecure about like, will I ever be able to do that when I need to? And it's not clear to me that kind of thinking is necessarily gonna come from the degree that I'm going after. And I don't like talking about that because I don't have any negative perception, like I'm gonna learn a ton and do a ton of great stuff in that degree, and maybe I'll even do that, and with the statistics portion, but I'm just not sure. And it's that uncertainty about that and the potential for failure there. And then I will feel regretful and I'll definitely feel that grief at that point. So I'm just like scared.
I'm wondering what you define failure as.
I think I would define failure as not achieving something that you know is possible. Not achieving something that you know is possible. I think that for me would feel somewhat like failure. Especially if you wanted to go after it. And I think that's once again a control thing too, because why does that like need like this OCD kind of tendency that I have? Like why does that have to be true? Like why can't you just let that go? That's kind of like the rhetorical question. And I don't know.
Do you feel like there's a deadline on these things that you want to achieve? I know you mentioned talking about wanting to move forward to other stages of your life in the next years or so. You talk about a family, getting out of your parents' house, and wanting to do other things. Do you feel like you would be able to do these things past a certain point?
Yes, to a degree. I mean, as you asked me that, like a part of me is more hopeful, thinking like, well, maybe there really isn't, a deadline. But I mean, I think my initial reaction is yeah, just because like some of the things that we talked about, like, want to start a family and things like that. And also I think I'm just mistrustful of myself. I don't trust myself to set any later deadlines because I've already shown that like there were times where I anticipated myself doing things by a certain point and they didn't happen. So like a part of me won't consider that there's some other deadline. Like it's like I've already made that mistake more than once. So like it's like I'm reaching again. I don't want to keep reaching my whole life. I'd rather just be successful and live a good life than be reaching my whole life.
Right.
That's something that also bothers me. And I look at that like failing to a degree. Like if you're always reaching, forever. I'm 80 years old talking about getting that cognitive psychology degree. That's like something that I'm concerned with.
Okay. I don't know if this is something that pops up like a countdown, but it's been going for 38 minutes.
That's okay. Do your thing. If you want to do a summary, I'll leave it. Take your time.
Yeah. So it sounds like you've just had, a lot that you've wanted to do and still want to do with your life. And, those things are really great things that, I feel like reflect you a lot as a person, as a really great person, which is, how you view yourself and how you want other people to view you as well. So, whenever you don't meet that expectation, it really hurts, to think of yourself as like less than great. That's kind of like weighing on you a lot, the expectation to be everything that you want to be and the fear that like you haven't achieved that or that you won't. But I think you're sort of on the right path of changing, your way of thinking to, either realize that, it is still possible to achieve all those things or to be at peace with what you already have. But either way, I think there are a lot of undertones of you knowing that like everything is the way it was meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Thank you.
That's 40.
Maybe this is going longer than 40.
Well, it like literally just hit 40 on the minute.